Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be doing my February wrap up. I always say like the month goes really fast, but February is technically shorter than every other month. But I actually read one more book this month than I did last month. I read six books this month, two of which I read in an entire, not, I read like one in an entire day twice, which I rarely, like it's, oh bless you. Obviously it's doable. I just very rarely do it because I'll read maybe like half of a book in a day and then like get distracted and just need to have my brain focus on something else for a little while, and then I'll finish it like the next day. But there was twice that I read in one sitting a book. Yesterday actually was the 28th of February and I finished an entire book just yesterday alone because we had a big snowstorm and I stayed home for the day. So after I shoveled, I just kind of hunkered down and read all day long. So first of all, I'm gonna look at, I know I read some of the books I said I was going to, but not all of them. When I did in my February TBR, I know I read at least 2 or 3 of the books. But I just have to, I'm gonna go back to that. Let me find it, if I can find it. Here we go, that video, and just skim through it real quick. Hey everyone, welcome back. If you watched my New Year Booktuber tag, let's see. I wonder if oh, I do. Thank God. Mentioning, like, putting the books in the description past me was smart and knew that future me was gonna have to look at this video. Okay, so in February, I said I wanted to read the rest of the Runaway series by Devney, which consisted of 3 books: Quarter Miles, Forsaken Trail, and Dotted Lines. When Heroes Fall by Giana Darling, When Villains Rise by Giana Darling, No Exit by Taylor Adams, and The Twisted Dead by Darcy Coates. Those were the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 books I said I wanted to read in February. I read more than half of them. There was only 2 books on this TBR that I did not read, and the one I completely forgot about, actually. The other one I just wanted a break in between, so I didn't start that one yet, but that's definitely gonna be on March. So let's skip into what I actually did read this month. I'm gonna pull up my Goodreads. I honestly did not really prepare to do this video. I got home from work, took a shower, and figured, oh shit, it's the 1st of March. I should probably do my wrap up and my TBR for the month so I can get them edited and posted. I haven't been really posting a whole lot within the last couple of weeks. I don't have any videos filmed. So I'm actually in the middle of doing like a vlog, but it's like a vlog that's gonna take a little bit of time to do. But so I'm hoping I'll find some things to do in between. Anywho, the first book I read in February was on my TBR, and that is When Heroes Fall by Giana Darling. This is the first book of the Anti-Heroes in Love duet. This is Elena and Dante's book. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I thought it was going to be a 5-star read. I'm hoping the next book's a 5-star read, because the thing with this one is Elena is a lawyer, like an associate at a law firm in New York City. She is, or her firm is representing Dante in a murder it's a RICO case. And a murder is involved also, which is something that happened in the Enslaved duet. So like it does carry over. And the thing with this was there was a lot of like trial, a lot of lawyer speak, a lot of collecting evidence and doing the trial, and I was just kind of like not bored necessarily, but a little bit kind of tired of just hearing about her and the trial and whatever. I do like I will say there is triggers in here for, I mean, it's a dark romance, there's triggers galore, and a lot of this is mafia. But there also is triggers for, I can't remember what the actual term is, they say it in the book, but when you can't orgasm. So there is that in there. There's infertility issues in here. And there's like a bunch of other like health stuff that goes on in this book. But yeah, so I ended up giving this one 4 stars. The end of this book, I will say, are no longer in a really, I mean, they're not really involved with the trial anymore. So I'm hoping When Villains Rise is going to be a lot more like probably my 5-star, because it's kind of like getting away from that aspect of it. Still loved it so much though. I love Giana Darling's writing. It is like very lyrical, and there are so many words she uses that it's like, it just expands on my vocabulary. Next one I read was Quarter Miles by Devney Perry. This was book 3 of her Runaway series. Again, another book that was on my February TBR. I gave this one 4 stars. This was, okay, I read these like really close together. Now I can't remember which one. So this was Catherine and Cash's book, I believe. So Catherine is runs the ranch resort thing from the previous book. She's like the general manager of it. Cash is the brother of Easton from the previous book. They have a friends, like they're like really good, like best friends and roommates, but Catherine has always had a thing for Cash, and as far as she like knows, he's never really reciprocated those feelings, and it just becomes really, really difficult to kind of be around him anymore. And then he brings a date to family dinner, which everyone thinks is a big deal because you don't bring anyone to family dinner unless they're like you're that close and like you consider them family. Like that's the relationship's that serious. So she thinks that he's got this new girl in his life and is a little like needs to like, I need to get away, like this is not happening. So it's her turn to take the Cadillac. She's gonna go, she doesn't want to go back to California like ever again. So she's gonna take it to Oregon to drop it off to Aria. And Cash ends up going with her, and it's a fun time. Where the Quarter Miles comes in, I can't remember, one of the ladies that, like the family members that owns the resort, gives her an old quarter that her and her, I think her husband used to flip, and it was like if it's heads it's left or tails it's right or whatever, and they would flip it and just kind of road trip and find new places just by flipping the quarter when they were ready to get off the straight stretch or whatever. So it was fun. I gave it 4 stars. Most of this like whole series, I don't think any of them except for maybe book 2 was 5 stars. I don't know. I didn't know. Book 2 was 3 stars. So I don't think anyone so far has gotten more than 4 stars, because book 2 I gave 3 stars. Book 3 I gave 4 stars. But it's a good series. It's a fun series. I love the concept of relaying this Cadillac back to California. Okay, next one that I read is actually not a romance. It's a thriller, I guess, and it's Hangman by Jack Heath. This is actually has to do with the vlog video I'm working on, because one of the books in that is like the sequel to this one, but you'll see that. I'll explain that in that video. But this is like the first book of a series, and trigger warnings, huge trigger warnings. The guy's a cannibal, just throwing that out there. But it's really fascinating because what he does is he gets involved with the FBI. They explain in the first book, they explain how that all happens like toward the end, but he's working with the FBI as like a civilian consultant on different cases. He's a very like smart, observant person. And he solved a lot of like kidnapping cases and that kind of stuff. So each time he solves a case and finds a missing child, he is instead of getting payment in like cash, he is rewarded a death row inmate. So one of the inmates that is going to be executed, instead of actually like killing them, they paralyze them instead, and then he gets his like the body disposal person, and he ends up getting the inmate to feast upon. It sounds super dark and gruesome, and it's not really. There are like, yes, there are some graphic body horror, body gore stuff that happens because the guy's a cannibal, and just some like body mutilation and things that, you know, it's if you're queasy in that way, I wouldn't pick this up. I would step away from it. But it's almost humorous in a way. There are some like it's light. It's not dark and heavy. There's some lightness to it that made it. I flew through this book. It was so good. I did give it 4 stars. I forget what I mentioned. There was something about it I was kind of like about. Oh, I feel like the whole mystery went on like way too long. Like it kept, I'm like, did he not, like he would figure something out and then realize that another clue would pop up that would make his conclusion like not make sense anymore. And I'm just like, can we just like figure out can we know who this is already, because it's getting ridiculous. But it's like, it's not a long book. It just felt long. but I was enjoying the ride. It was cool. And every chapter heading has like riddles at the beginning of each chapter, because what another side job he does is he gets people to send him riddles, puzzles, Rubik's cubes, like things like mind games and things like that, and he'll solve them for money. But it's an interesting series so far. Very interesting. Okay, next one I read is another one in the Runaway series, and that's book 4, Forsaken Trail. This one I also gave 4 stars. This was the accidental pregnancy one that I was really, really excited for. This was Arya and I can't remember what his name is. Arya and he had a weird name. Okay, not a weird name. It was Brody. Arya and Brody. His name was like Broderick or something. This one had so many great tropes. It was he was like a billionaire. He's a billionaire. Arya's sister Clara works for him as like his secretary slash assistant. Arya's always hated him. She thinks that he just throws money around and flaunts it around like it's nothing, which comes up as an issue, which is why I got 4 stars, because I mean I understand where Arya's coming from, but they'd have a one-night stand. She ends up getting pregnant. He begs her to allow him to, you know, have an active part in his child's life. So he ends up convincing her to, at least temporarily for like a short while, a year or so, move into his house or like down in Arizona with him. And he ends up like buying her so much stuff, and she gets really, really upset about it because like, why? And it got really annoying because I mean, I could understand where she was coming from, but at the same time, it's like, just let the guy buy you things. Like, what else is he gonna spend his money on? You know, it's his child. He wants to provide for you and them, and he just wants to be like, he wants to give and help you. So yeah, but it was good. I enjoyed it a lot. But again, it was 4 stars. I was hoping to be 5. And then this is one of the books I read in a single day, and that's the final book of the Runaway series, which is Dotted Lines. This is Arya's sister Clara's book. This is Clara and Carson. So this entire road trip, the Cadillac is going from Boston with London all the way to California to Carson. So we finally get the car to California. There's a little bit of unrequited love. We get to see a flashback of when everyone lived in the junkyard, which I really liked that, because we got a lot of like Clara's point of view was in the past tense when they were living in the junkyard, toward like the end of that, right before their 18th birthday, and then like the present day is more of Carson's point of view, which I also really, really liked. I like that we got both of those. I did, and then we got to see at the very end an epilogue of like, it was like 20 some years later, so they're like in their 40s or 50s at this point, and you get to see everything all wrapped up and what happened to everybody, and I shed tears at the end of this book. So it got 5 stars. It's probably more like 4.5, only because I was hoping to get more of, like, we did get a lot of flashback, a lot of it. So I was hoping to get, I think probably half of it was past tense or in the past. But I was hoping more of the current building relationship between Clara and Carson. And I did like, there is another woman trope in here, but it's not anything extreme. It's kind of resolved fairly quickly. Like, the girl kind of like understands what's going on. But yeah, it was good. I really, really enjoyed it. The one thing about this, though, I found that all of the at least one of the characters has found their way to wealth in some form or another, whether it's the heroine or the hero, like the love interest, like one of them is wealthy or found their way to wealth, and I'm just like, okay. Like, I mean, good for them going from, you know, literal rags to riches in their life. Like, kudos. But I was almost kind of like, is that really realistic though? I don't know. But overall, I did enjoy the series a lot. I definitely liked it I haven't read all of Devney Perry's series. I did read Clifton Forge, which I really, really liked. But you can definitely tell this is like one of her first series. It's also, the books are also super short, like under 300 pages, easy reads. But they were a good time, and I really enjoyed the series. So the final book that I read in February, and the book that I read yesterday in entirety in the day, was No Exit by Taylor Adams. Yes, I finally got this book off of my TBR. I said in my TBR video that I was waiting for a snow day, a big snowstorm, to read this book because it takes place in a blizzard, and while the snow had pretty much stopped by the time I was reading this because it snowed overnight, I still got my kicks reading this in the cold with the big white winter wonderland outside of my windows. And this book I gave 4 stars. It was really good. Not what I expected. For whatever reason, like, I don't know, I didn't read the synopsis, I guess, since like the first time I read it, so I couldn't remember. Like, I remembered it took place in a blizzard at a rest area, and the person finds like a child in a cage, and they have to figure out who is the owner of said vehicle. That all happens very, very early on in the book. Like, she figures it out super easy. We have our heroine is Darby. She's a college sophomore, which I thought the person was going to be older than they are. Like, she was like a college student. I'm like, oh, this is even more interesting because she's a young woman, essentially. And I thought the person was a male for some reason. I don't know why. And her mother is dying. She is on a spur of the moment road trip from Colorado to Utah, gets hit with snowmageddon, as they call it, a huge blizzard. Her car is like literally falling apart, so she just says she can't travel anymore in the weather, pulls over into a rest area where there's already 2 other people, or three other people, like, waiting. There's 4. There's 4 other people already, like, stranded there, stuck there. And then she ends up, they're trying to find cell service. There's no cell service. The radio's not working. They're essentially literally snowed into this rest area until the plows can get through in the morning. So they're stuck there overnight, and then it becomes this huge, the mystery part of it doesn't last long. It becomes very thriller fairly early on when she figures out who the person who kidnapped this child is. And it gets very intense, very, very intense. I will say that there is a little bit, I say a little bit of a twist because I called it. So that little part of it, I was like, it doesn't bother me when I like find books predictable, but it was more thrilling because I was like, oh, I'm right. Oh yeah. The one thing that got me was because the people have been stranded there for so long, their vehicles are covered with snow, and then she couldn't tell the difference between a dumpster and a car. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, maybe, like, if it was snowing that much, like, when she got there, she assumed that this car had been sitting there for so long that it was completely, entirely covered in snow, and she couldn't tell it. Like, she thought it was someone's vehicle, but it was a dumpster. And I'm just like, I don't know if I believe that. Like, you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit on that, because I'm gonna guess a dumpster could be the size of a vehicle, but definitely not the shape. I don't know. That's where I was kind of like, there's like a lot of triggers in this. There is some gore, like body horror in this. There is some like sex trafficking mentions in this. Obviously child abuse. Like, it gets a little gory. Little gory. Some things like in Hangman where I was kind of like, ooh, like, ew. Again, I'm not bothered. Things don't bother me, but some of the body horror stuff kind of makes me cringe a little bit because you just vision it in your head and you're just like, your limbs and things hurt. Like, you get phantom sympathy pains, I guess, is what you would call it. So yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. I'm happy I finally got that off of my TBR. But those are the 6 books that I read in February. I think I did a lot better in February than I did in January. I know January I had some misses, but pretty much everything, actually, yes, everything I read in February, I very much enjoyed. I think they were all 4-star books. except for Dotted Lines, which was 5-star. They were all 4-star books, which is phenomenal. So, okay, well, that's gonna be it for this video. Hopefully I can get my TBR up and ready to go soon too. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!